So before speaking about main stack, let me just introduce myself. My name is Rahiman, and I have 11 years of experience across IT industry, both in Bangalore and Hyderabad. These are the companies I am associated with in the past. So NES, recent Tesco. These are the companies which I worked with when I worked in Bangalore. Then I moved to Hyderabad for Microsoft R&D. This is a recent company I've worked with, and right now I'm working for a startup as a technical lead, leading a team of five. So day in day out, I work on full stack of technologies, ASP.NET, main stack as well as Azure. So I keep doing trainings on both the fronts, offline as well as online. Coming to my certifications, I'm Microsoft certified Azure Solution Architect. That is essentially taking three certifications: 32, 33, and 34, which is developing Azure solutions, implementing and architecting Azure solutions. Coming to the other certification title which I have, Microsoft Certified Technology Specialist. That takes another two certifications, which is on C Sharp and .NET. So I'm essentially having two titles, which essentially took five certifications to be done. If someone is not speaking, you can just mute your phone. If you have any questions, you can unmute it. Let us start with our discussion. So we'll speak about mean stack and why is it more required than ever now in the current evolving technologies. This is one of the keyword clients are looking for to hire people. That essentially is if you are a mean stack developer, there are quite a few applications out there which are being developed using this stack. Why is it so famous? Let us just have a quick background around it. So it helps you build your web development on a rapid phase because you're on JavaScript end to end. So what do I mean by JavaScript end to end? If I just open my whiteboard, let me just have this handy. If at all there is some noise, I'll just mute it. So you have a client. Uh, Architecture would look something like this, and you have a server. Client interacting with the server. Then you have something like services, which will definitely be there. Modular architecture. So you'll be having services, then you would be having database. So your server would be speaking to the services, and the services would have an interaction with the database, and they would go ahead and pull the data back. I'll not put the reverse arrow. So just understand that it will pull the data back, and that is how client is able to see the pages or the data on the screen. So essentially, what are the technologies which you use when you have to build the client? You use HTML, CSS from different interfaces, but essentially it will be HTML and CSS. And then at the server, you would be using, if it all is a .NET stack, then you would be using something like ASP.NET MVC. For services, what you'll be using, you'll be using Web API framework or WCF framework. On databases end, you have MS SQL. So when a developer says he is a full stack developer on ASP.NET or Microsoft technologies, he has to be smart in how many technologies to just put it at the minimum level: two, three, four, just say one, two, three, four. At least four technologies he has to be smart at, so that he can go ahead and call himself a full stack developer. That is not the case when we speak about mean stack development. So essentially, whenever we are saying mean stack development, at the client end, we have Angular, the A in the main stack. So what is it that is used to build Angular? what is the technology or what is the language which you use is JavaScript. We use TypeScript, but that is just a superset of JavaScript. So essentially, we will be using JavaScript to build this layer when we speak about mean stack. What is it that is used at the server level? It would be Node.js. In what is the language which you use in Node.js? It is again JavaScript. I'll just say JS. What is it that we use in the services part? We will be using Express.js. Again, what is it? In the name itself, we have the JS. So again, what is the language? Is JavaScript. Coming to the database end, what is the language which we use when we speak about MongoDB? When we speak about mean stack, it is MongoDB. Again, the language which we use here is JavaScript. The developer has to just be hands-on with one language here. So even though he switches context, he is just working on one language, which is JavaScript. So if he is just smart at one language, he can be a full stack developer working end to end. Other advantage, these are brilliantly performant applications. When you use Node as your backbone, it has its own advantages. We'll speak about why Node is so fast. Why is it the most efficient way of building modern applications? We'll speak about all that when we speak about the Node.js module. So essentially, it has its own advantages when we actually build things with Node as the backbone. So what is happening with the developer when he is switching context across layers? He is just using one technology, which is JavaScript. That is where you can expect the developer to be pretty efficient because he is not switching context as in case with any other technologies which you work with, like ASP.NET full stack. You would be switching technologies as and when you work with multiple layers. That's not the case when we work with mean stack development. That is one of the advantages you have there. Another thing which clients look at, they need to reduce the cost. So essentially, what is free and what is more performant? That's what most clients go for. And whatever we have in mean is completely open source. Your MongoDB, Express, Angular, and Node, all of that are completely open source and they are free to use. So you don't have any licensing headaches which client has to go through. That is one of the first things which people look for whenever you do analysis on what is the technology I should use to develop my application. The architects will come up with different suggestions. One of the suggestions would be on based on cost. What is the cost that I need to spend to buy the licenses and get the things done? That is what the client is more interested in. So you have no cost at all when the client actually chooses mean stack. That is another push why you have applications which are being built in mean stack. And faster MVP development and scalability. What is MVP? Your minimum viable product. So what is minimum viable product? Essentially, we'll speak more about it when we speak about our sessions, but MVP essentially is whenever you have a product, what are the minimum features which I can use to go live in the market? There is a ping. So what is the minimum product which I need to use? What are the minimum features which I can have in my application for going to the market? So essentially, market essentially is to go live to production. So that is what would be your that is what would be your MVP. So essentially, the minimum set of features which I can go to actually go live. That is another advantage which I get when I actually use mean stack. Another thing, increase developer flexibility and efficiency. Essentially, the developer is pretty much flexible and he is pretty much efficient just because he is not switching languages across these layers. Whenever he is working on multiple layers, he is just working on just the JavaScript guy. And being smart in only this is enough for him to scale up and design and work on all these layers of your application. the best thing is your performance. If you look at the performance of a Node.js application, it is pretty much outstanding when you compare it with any of the competing languages out there like PHP, Python, or Ruby. If you just compare the performance of these applications which are built on main stack, there are pretty good benchmark stats which are provided to us online, so you can just have a look at it. That is another push why clients are going towards mean stack development, because it is pretty performant, because of the way it has been built. We'll speak about why it is more performant. So if you just look at the market layout regarding JavaScript kind of technologies, so Stack Overflow, if you have any programming background, you would have landed on this website to clarify some of the doubts, or to resolve some of the errors you are facing. So on the Stack Overflow, the number of topics which are relevant to JavaScript is clearly more than any of the other languages. It was a stat which was pulled in 2016. Today is 2019. So you have this stat which would be clearly different from what it was in 2016. So now there is a clear increase in the number of discussions happening on JavaScript. So this is one of the reasons why JavaScript is more famous. You can understand that, yeah, JavaScript is being used across different applications. And when you look at the job trend on Indeed, when you just look at this, you have Node.js, which is the red one, which is clearly an ask in the market. So essentially, there are more and more clients or corporates looking for people who have Node.js as one of the technologies which they can work with. So the trend is clearly high, and this is again a stat in 14. It is totally different now. It is much more when you speak about Node.js. Same on the MongoDB end. These are the competitors for NoSQL databases. MongoDB is again in the front end, in the front. So that the ask for MongoDB is also pretty high, which is part of your main stack learning. So you can see that the average salary which is offered to a main stack developer is clearly high. This was a stat back in 2016. So now it should be pretty much different and pretty much high, because LAMP stack and other stack of technologies are not that famous like main stack. So it should be definitely high and on the higher end. Coming to the full stack development, you should have heard about this term. People look for full stack developers now. They don't the corporates do not want any longer people who are specialized in a particular layer. Previously, if I am good at the server side coding, or good at the services coding, or good at DB, I would have survived 5 years before this date. So I would have survived very easily. Now the ask is more and more towards a specialized developer who is a full stack developer. Essentially, one guy who can take care of all these layers, what you see on screen. The capability of the developer has to expand, because that is the ask of the market, and that's why you see more and more asks online, or with the clients for a full stack developer, and it is clearly high. So the other kinds of roles are quite fast dying out. They'll not extinguish, but essentially they are quite fast dying out, and the ask for this stack of technologies capable developer is clearly high, your full stack development, because this guy can take care of end-to-end scenarios. So if we speak about that's why that is one of the reasons. These are some of the stats which I keep showing up, so that you understand what is the trend in the market and what is the ask from the customers. So coming back to our discussion, how did JavaScript evolve over the years? So initially it was used only for validation. So if you had a form, and let us consider this form as a login form. So if you had a form, you would be having username, password. have your username password fields. Previously, JavaScript was only used for validation. That is, whether the username is a valid email address, to just check whether it is a valid email address. The password has the mix of characters which I am looking for, like your capital letters, special characters, and numbers, and a combination of different things. Is that having these combination of things? Is it possessing all of those? That is what was the check which was being done previously. So essentially, are these things in place or not? That is what JavaScript was used for. As years went by, there came dynamic HTML. So essentially, you started manipulating the DOM, your document object model. So you started manipulating the HTML using JavaScript. Then came XHR, your XML HTTP requests. We will speak about XML HTTP requests when we speak about the Express.js module. So we'll come to that, but we'll come to that at a later stage. So we'll speak about it. What is REST and what is RESTful service? Why services? Why should I actually split my things into services? Why can't I just integrate it within my server layer and interact with the DB directly? Why is this a more modular approach and a best practice when we speak about modularizing our app? All of that we'll speak about it, but we'll speak about it once we start speaking about Express.js. So then coming back to our discussion, so JavaScript evolved into XHR requests. Then came very popular frameworks like jQuery, Prototype, YUI. jQuery clearly the winner of a framework to work with JavaScript. So you have a much more feasible way working with JavaScript. It had a plethora of methods or functions which you can use in your day-to-day application, and this had a very big role in making JavaScript one of the most popular languages on the client end. Now it's the MVC world. So we have applications, we have frameworks like Angular, taking JavaScript to the next level, wherein you have an architectural pattern which is adapted inside Angular, and you have MVC. So we will speak about what model view and controller are, and why should we segregate the concerns when we speak about MVC. Why is it there is a split of concerns? We'll speak about different design patterns and principles like solid principles. We'll speak about that, as well as a few of the design patterns which are good for you to build an app. We'll speak about it. One of the design patterns which is pretty much recommended is MVC. So when you even build a modern ASP.NET Core application, the backbone of that is MVC. That is what is the recommended thing which you need to use. So even the most advanced templates across languages, not only just Angular, across languages like .NET and Java, they recommend to adapt MVC pattern, your model view and controller. This clearly segregates the concerns, and it is very easy for an enterprise application to scale up and to be modularized at the same time. So MVC is quite a famous pattern, and that is what is adapted inside Angular as well. So this is how JavaScript evolved across the years, and we are in the MVC world now, wherein there is a framework which is offering JavaScript as a architectural pattern. So coming to the different pieces of things which we will be speaking about. One is Node and Express. Node at the server end and Express.js at the services end. So what is Node? Let me just go to my command prompt and say Node. I am in the Node world now. So essentially, it is it is built on top of Chrome's JavaScript runner. So essentially, where did JavaScript execute all these days before Node? It executes here in my browser. My browser understands JavaScript, and it will show up depending upon what is the JavaScript function. So it is the browser which executes the JavaScript. They just gave us an environment to execute JavaScript outside browser. That's simple, in a simplistic way, what Node is. So this Node, once I say Node, I am in the Node world. The prompt which you see here is a Node prompt. So if I just say 1 plus 5, it understands that it is JavaScript which is being executed, and it went ahead and gave me the output. To just prove you in some other sense, if I say name, where name is equals to mark, and then just say name, this statement, once it is executed, is asking the compiler to store mark inside the variable name. Once I say name, you can see the output mark. So essentially this is a JavaScript statement. Now you can understand that, yeah, JavaScript is being executed inside this command prompt. What is this command prompt? It is a node command prompt. I invoked node, and then I'm working on my local box, and I'm executing JavaScript outside the browser. That's in simplistic terms what node is all about. It just brought the JavaScript execution engine outside the Chrome environment. So essentially, again, Google in the scope. So essentially, Angular, Google, Node, Google. So essentially, you will keep hearing Google's technologies in different aspects of in different layers when we actually go ahead and build our applications. So this is again Google engineers who have designed this. So what is Node.js? It uses an event-driven non-blocking I/O model. What is event-driven? What is non-blocking I/O? These are the things which make Node more performant and faster. We'll speak about it when we start speaking about Node. To just keep it simple, we'll just understand that Node is something which will help us execute JavaScript outside the browser environment. That is what we are doing here when we actually go ahead and execute this. So it makes it lightweight. It is lightweight and it is efficient. So whenever you have data intensive real time applications that run across distributed devices, this is the best choice. So you have multiple applications out there live using Node.js as their backbone server. We'll see about it when we start speaking about Node.js. Then coming to Express framework. This is something which is built on top of Node.js. So when we speak about Express.js, it is an extension to Node.js, and it is a framework which leverages and which is built on top of Node.js. What does this do, and how is Express.js coming into picture? It helps me set up middlewares to respond to HTTP requests. So essentially, what is a middleware? When we speak about Express.js, we will speak about I'm just going to my notepad. Didn't open it. When we speak about Express.js, we speak about something like REST. REST, it is representational state transfer. Essentially, this would help you segregate the commands, or segregate the things or the actions into few commands like get, put, post, and delete. These are again, if you know about CRUD operations, your create, read, update, and delete of SQL. This is similar to that. So no matter what is the kind of application you're working with, you can segregate the commands which are being fired to that particular application into these buckets. What do I mean by that? So quickly looking at the whiteboard. So if you just look at a typically famous website like Facebook, what can you do with Facebook? You can go ahead and post your images, post your memories, post your anything. You can do posts on it, and you can go ahead and comment on a particular post or like a particular post. So essentially, you are doing something wherein you are actually inserting something into the database. What is a post? You are posting something. You are writing a comment. That is essentially in the backend. Facebook is going ahead and storing this data in its database. So essentially, you are inserting something by doing these actions. What would that be in REST terms? It would be post. the action which I would write to do these things would be post. What are other things which I do? When I land on the landing page of the Facebook, it shows me all the activities which are done by all of my friends. What is it doing? It is pulling data from the database. It is pulling data and showing me it in the dashboard. So in the dashboard, what am I seeing? All the activities. Now what is that? Pulling all the activities. I am pulling something. I am getting something from the DB. So that is a get operation or get action. So you did a get. What else can I do? I can delete a post. I can delete a comment. I can unlike something. Forget about liking, but I can delete a post and delete a comment. So I can do the delete activities, right? What is that as an action? It is a delete action. What else can I do? I can go ahead and update a post, update a comment. I just wrote something which is not required in a comment or in a post. So I will go ahead and edit it. So what is that? You will update a post or update a comment and stuff. What will that be? In which bucket will that fall? Into the put. Put is your update. So tell me what you can do with Facebook. I'll segregate those into one of these buckets. You can't escape any of these buckets, and you cannot tell me an operation which doesn't fall in the one of these categories. So that's the beauty of REST and these verbs. These are called verbs, which is get, put, post, and delete. These are the verbs of HTTP. So you tell me an operation, I can segregate that within one of these verbs. That's the beauty of HTTP verbs. So essentially, this is what we will see when we start speaking about Express.js and what are the verbs which are used, and why is it so powerful, and why is it the best way to build your services. All of that we'll see once we start working with Express.js. For now, just understand it will help me build middleware, and it also defines a routing table. So whenever you're working with a real-time application, say employee information system, this is managing employees on a on a corporate's intranet site. So whenever you are in a corporate, you have an intranet site. In your intranet site, you can log in and you can see what are the activities happening within your organization. That's your employee information system, say. So whenever you're whenever there is an admin who is managing the employees who are the new joiners, so they can manage they can add employees, they can remove employees who are leaving the organization. So essentially they can do multiple things using this site, say. So whenever I move from one page to other, like your host name is your name of your application. Whenever I'm moving from one place to another, your URLs will look like this. So essentially, I'm looking at employees. If I say employees here, I'm doing a get operation to pull the information, and I'm getting all the list of employees, and my URL will look like this. Instead of a URL, I'll say route. So this is a route, and it is maintained in something called as a routing table. We'll speak about routes and routing table in Angular as well as in Express JS world. So this is a route, and what is this? This is a specific employee possessing a particular ID. So I'm pulling a employee's information out here. By just looking at this route, I can understand what is happening inside this. To just put it in another terms, whenever I go to one of the famous websites which developers like, so Stack Overflow, I just click on tags. You have your route changing. Users, you again see the route changing. So essentially that's your route, and all of these are maintained in a routing table inside Angular. We'll see all of that when we speak about Express.js framework. So that's something we will get back to. So it allows dynamically rendering of HTML pages based on arguments being passed to this template. So you can pass arguments if at all there is any argument which is being passed here. So you can also pass arguments to your URLs saying name is equals to so and so. So essentially, you can pass arguments in different ways. You can pass it from headers. You can pass it from your URL. So you have multiple ways in which you can pass your information and your parameters to the actions. So we'll see all of that when we start speaking about Express.js. That's pretty much about your Express and your Node.js. Coming to the DB, there is a very famous DB constraint, DB schema, which is being discussed and which is pretty extensively used out there, which is your NoSQL DB. One of the famous NoSQL DBs is MongoDB. Is this the only one? No, there are multiple NoSQL DBs out there, and this is definitely the most famous, most aggressively used across applications. And what does it do? It stores data in terms of BSON, which is a binary format of your JSON. So, what is JSON first? It is a lightweight way of passing data across layers, and all it has is key value pairs. So it just uses key value pairs to actually go ahead, and it would be something like this. Like so it would be something like this, and just a repetition of key value pairs. So if I just say if it is an employee object, name of the employee, ID of the employee, whatever is the ID, his phone number, and blah blah. So essentially, it would be something like this. If at all I want to represent an employee object in terms of JSON, I would be using key value pairs. It's a key and it's a value. So essentially, that's JSON. This guy, MongoDB, stores the data in terms of BSON. Essentially, a binary format of JSON. That's how he stores the data. And what is NoSQL? There are two ways of storing data in the database. One is the same example which we are seeing here. I want to store this data inside the database. So there is a SQL way, which is your RDBMS, your relational database. So how will I store it? I would have a schema for it. What is a schema? Essentially, I would have an employee table, and this employee table would have an ID, first name, last name, your phone number, blah blah, different things. So you would be having something like a layout, and you have to fit the data which is coming in within this layout. That is the constraint. You have to fit it, unless and until some of these are is null kind of values. So if at all it is a is null. One second, there is noise here. Let me just mute it. Yeah, it's better now. So essentially, you have phone number, unless and until you say it is null, then I can allow nulls in it. Otherwise, the table would force me to insert some data inside phone number as well, if at all it is not null. So essentially, there is a schema which is laid out, and I have to stick to the schema. That's not the case with NoSQL. I can store data as in when I get the data. I can dump the data inside the DB, and the DB is efficient enough to pull the data back depending upon how we are pulling it. And we will speak about how we pull data from a NoSQL DB like MongoDB. If we are storing unstructured data, that's how you term it. Your data is not structured in any way. It is a structured data. So whenever you are storing unstructured data, you essentially are using the most efficient way of dumping the data. So this is one of the best ways of to scale your applications pretty fast, and one of the best ways of storing data because it is faster. It doesn't have any constraints to be looked into. We'll see why NoSQL is so famous and why is it performant once we start speaking about NoSQL DB. So that's your MongoDB. essentially your NoSQL DB. So now if we look back at our architecture, you have at the client end JavaScript, which is your Angular framework. You have at the server end again JavaScript, which is your Node.js and Express.js framework. At the DB end, we again have JavaScript, which is MongoDB, which we can interact with it using JavaScript language. So essentially, the web developer need not context switch when moving from one tier to another tier. As we spoke about this, I have the diagram. So as we spoke about different layers in any other language, he should be switching context. In this stack of technologies, which is Angular and Node.js and Express.js and MongoDB. So essentially all of this help you not to switch context and just stick to one thing. We'll speak about what is how we can go ahead and design applications by just having knowledge in just one language. We'll speak about it extensively once we start speaking about different layers to do with Angular. So essentially, that's pretty much about what Mongo is. It is pretty much the acronym is actually jumbled. Your Angular is at the client end, so it should have started with the A and then a N and then a E and then a M. To just get a good phrase out of it, they just came up with mean. It no way means that this is coming in the middle. So we'll speak about Angular first. Why Angular? What are the advantages of Angular? What are pipes? What are the things which come up in Angular? We'll speak about Angular. Then we keep moving from Angular to Node to Mongo and to Express. So what are the different modules? We'll speak about the introduction of our different technologies. Then we speak about the prerequisites of what you need to have. So if you look at my local box, what do I have? So if you just say Node in my local box, the Node version which I have is the latest version 8.11. And if you look at the Angular version which I have, it will take some time to show this up. It's not fast, I don't know why. So the Angular version which I have is 7.2 on my machine. Let it come up. Yeah. So you have 7.2 Angular version. The node is 8.11. So you have different other packages which come along with Angular. We'll speak about these packages when we start speaking about Angular. So essentially, these are the things which I want you to have once we start our discussion. So in our initial session, we'll speak about prerequisites, how to get these things into your box. So that would be covered within your prerequisites module. So we'll speak about it. We'll speak about code, VS Code, and why is that an efficient way to work with Angular. If you're familiar with any other IDE, it should be fine, but code is one of the best IDEs to work with. We'll speak about all of that in prerequisites. Then we set up a skeleton application. We'll create a skeleton application using Angular commands. So if I just go to my regular demo location, let me just go there. Just 1 minute. So if I just go to my demo, so I keep taking batches. So let me just create a new folder. Inside this, let me say open my command prompt. So in my command prompt, there is a new folder which has nothing. How easy is it for me to create an Angular application? I'll say ng new Angular app. That's about it. It will ask me a couple of questions. It will ask me what is the do you want routing module to be enabled within it? We'll speak about modules, components, and stuff. It is asking me, would you like to add Angular routing within it? I'll say yeah, I need to add it. What is the kind of style sheet that you want to use? It's not just CSS now. It is there are multiple formats like a CSS, Sass, Less, and Stylus. We'll speak about those. But for now, because everyone is familiar with CSS, I'll just say, yeah, I'm just using my arrow key to navigate. So I'll say CSS, that's the format I want to use. That's about it. It goes ahead and gives me an enterprise level application, and then it starts downloading the packages. This is what is downloading node packages. There's a noise here again. So you have the packages which are being installed. We'll just ignore the packages which are being installed. I'll just kill the process. So installing packages is just another day. We'll speak about installing packages. But if you just look at the structure of folders which I have been given, your E2E is your end-to-end test cases. You have multiple other files. We'll speak about what these files are and what are the advantages of using these files. One second, I have a lot of noise here. It's better now. So essentially you have different files which you can work with. We'll speak about this. If you go to the source app, that's where your code will stay. All of your source code is present within the source. Within this you have multiple other files, your karma, your unit testing files, your index file, and blah blah. So you have multiple things which we will speak about, but just see how easy it was for me to create an entire structure. It was just one simple command. So that's the advantage of using Angular CLI. So all I did was ng new Angular app, and I'm good to go. So we'll set up a skeleton of our application, then we will move forward. We'll speak about what are the versions which I have on my box, so that you should be having the same versions on your box, because there is a slight variation between versions, and we would not be on the same page when we actually go hands on. Each module in each day, I would be keeping on giving you practice exercises, so that you would practice more on whatever we speak in the session. So we should match what you see on screen and what you do in your local environment should match the things. So essentially, we should have the same versions installed. I'll give you the numbers of what I have on my machine, so that you have the same version, so that we are on the same page. That's about the version. So what are the different things? A walking skeleton, a introduction, a walking skeleton, deployment. So we'll also speak about how to deploy our application. Once we're done with development, the next thing is deployment. What is the best way of deploying our application, and what are the ways, not just one way, what are the different ways of deploying your application? We'll speak about that too. We'll speak about the UI of on the Angular front. What is the best way, and frameworks which are available out there which you can integrate within your UI code. We'll speak about authentication and authorization. What's authorization and authentication? These both look and sound similar, but they are completely different. We'll speak about that as well. We'll speak about testing. So once you are developing your application, testing is a very core thing which you need to do, so that you have a robust code built. We'll speak about what is unit testing, what is Jasmine, what is Karma, what is Protractor. We'll speak about these things once we start speaking about client-side testing. So what are the other things which we speak about? We'll speak about creation of entities. What are the ways in which you can create entities? What is entity? Oh, whiteboard again. So what is an entity? Essentially, some projects call it entities, some call it classes, some call it models. They're all speaking about the same thing. It's essentially a class. So different projects, different people, different terminologies. They're all speaking about a class. So we'll speak about how to create an entity based upon a requirement. If at all I get a requirement, I get a requirement from the client as a requirement document. I, as a technical person, I'm a technical lead. I'm a practicing technical lead. That's why I keep taking these sessions in my buffer time during mornings or in the weekends. So how do the requirements come in as a requirement document? Then I, as a technical person, SC, a software engineer, a senior software engineer, or a technical lead, I come up with something called as a technical document. I'll just say tech doc. This technical document would be reviewed. Who, by whom? By your technical lead or your architect. They'll go ahead and review your document. Once your document is reviewed and they say, yeah, the technical document looks good, it is matching the requirement, then you would go ahead and start coding for it. Once you're done coding, you will write unit test cases for it. Once your coding and unit test cases are done, then you would go ahead and deploy it. Deploy it to where? There are multiple environments depending upon what your project is. There would be staging environment, there would be dev, there would be QA, there would be PPE, your pre-prod environment. Some people call it IAT, your integration environment. Then you have prod environment. So you have multiple environments where you will deploy your code. So to just keep it simple, once I'm done with my coding and unit tests, I'll deploy it to the staging environment. This is where the QA will pitch in and they'll start testing my code. They'll log bugs. Once the bugs are resolved, now I can push it to the production. What is the life cycle of your requirement? Where did it all start? It started with a simple text. What is it that is present inside the requirement document? It is text. They would come up with functional requirement in a text format. I, as a software engineer, convert that text into technical document. How do I do that? I need to match the words. So I need to look into the verbs in a statement. So if at all someone is speaking about let us build a student information system, SIS, for a university. So student information system, by just looking at the name, what is the noun in this? Is the student. So I know as a developer, no matter, there would be multiple classes, but I definitely know there is a student class because that's a noun in the requirement. Like in the same way, in a banking application, what are the nouns that you can come up with? You have a noun like customer, so you should be having a customer class. There is a noun like employee. Banks has employees, so your manager is an employee, your clerk is an employee, everyone is an employee, your facilities guy is an employee. So each one, I have a thing now at this time. So each one is an employee. So I can have for a banking application, I can think of these nouns and I can go ahead and build my classes, customer class and employee class. So no matter what is the domain, you should look for the nouns and those are your classes. What are my methods then? They are the verbs within your requirement. The requirement would be I, as an admin, able to add an employee who is joining in. I should be able to remove an employee. That's it. We'll just keep it simple. So then what is the action here? What is the verb here? Add, remove. Those are my methods within my employee class. So within my employee class, I will go ahead and say add employee. That's one of my methods. Remove employee. Another method. So essentially, you would be having now by just looking at this one statement, I came up with a class and I came up with a couple of methods. To add an employee, that's another thing. I'll look at where I need to add it. What is the DB? I'll call a service inside or I'll directly interact with the DB and stuff like that. But I at least got the skeleton up and running by looking at the requirement. This is what I'll specify in my technical document. So then that is what is reviewed and then it goes ahead at the different stages. Most projects don't even have the privilege of having a developer do this. They'll give you a requirement document, they'll ask you to jump to coding. They'll not have these steps. Very standard organizations like Microsoft, Google, they'll practice this, and like Tesco, I've worked with Tesco, they practice this. In other organizations which I've worked with, they don't practice this. They'll just have a requirement document, they'll ask the developer to jump to coding. So then after he deploys it, this is where they'll say, no, this is this is not what we expected. So very late. You should have told me this at this level, so that I would have coded it that way. Why was this being discovered now? Because of the standards which you maintain. Because you don't have different things which you should have in place. So that's a different discussion of what is a best practice to go ahead with any requirement coming in. So essentially, depending upon the requirement, I as a developer should be able to come up with classes. So we'll speak about that as well when we speak about creating entities and stuff. We'll speak about how to deal with data, and we'll speak about some of the concepts like sorting, filtering, caching. So what are the modules which we will have? These are the things which you need to have on your box: Angular, Node, MongoDB, your Express. Even though they look like different things, just installing Node will give me all this. So all of these can be installed as packages. So I just need to have Node. Just get Node installed. So where will I get that installed from? We'll speak about it in the introduction modules. But if you are curious, so install Node.js. The first link would be your Node.js org. So depending upon what your system is, if it's a Windows system or a Mac, or if you just want to download the source code. So depending upon that, go ahead and pull this guy and install it. So just getting Node will give you access to all the other three. So even though they are different blocks, they're just the same. We'll speak about how we can get these guys installed on our machines. We'll speak extensively about JavaScript. That is what is spanning across all of these boxes. Then we'll speak about unit testing. Why unit testing is a best practice. How will it help me build a very robust application by following patterns and practices? We'll speak about Karma when we speak about unit testing in Angular. We'll speak about Karma, Jasmine, and Protractor. Then we speak about Git. So where do you store your code? You store it in a repository. What is a very famous repository now is Git. So we'll speak about Git, how to store data in it, how to pull data from it. So we'll speak about Git inside once we are done with all of our modules. We'll host it in Git. So what are the different modules which we'll have? We'll speak about JavaScript and MVC framework and Angular in the first module. Then we start speaking about components and DOM interactions. What are components? Once you understand components, you got 50% of Angular. All of Angular is component. So anything which you build is a component. So it is a bunch of components that are interacting with each other. That's what is an Angular app. You have other things as well, but once you understand this guy, that's why I just said 50%. But 50% of your understanding of Angular is done once you are good with components. That is what we'll stress more on in the second module. Then we'll speak about what are components and what is dependency injection. What is DI? And if you have ever heard about solid principles. Whiteboard again. So if you have ever spoke about solid principles, your single responsibility, open and closed principle, the D is your dependency injection. So this is one of the principle, and it is very powerful, very good for me to loosely couple my applications. What is dependency injection? Why is it best, and why is it that Angular provides it out of box? There is the Angular framework supports dependency injection. Why is it a good practice? All of that we'll speak about it in this module. What is dependency injection and stuff. Then we'll speak about routes, inbuilt directives, and pipes. These are the ways in which the pipes are the ways in which you can manipulate the data. We'll speak about pipes and directives and routes in this module. Then we'll speak about third-party library integrations. We have multiple third-party libraries which are out there. At least I can remember that 20,000 libraries are out there on Angular to help you out with multiple things. The most famous libraries like Lodash, underscore, both helping you address the same concern. So you have multiple libraries which you can work with, which will actually help ease your pain when you are working with Angular. So there are multiple reusable modules out there which you can import and start using. We'll speak about those things in this module. Then finally we'll start speaking about unit testing. and we'll use Angular CLI throughout this, all the modules, not just here. So we'll speak about Angular CLI. When I just said ng new and Angular app name, I'm using Angular CLI there. Command line interface. We'll get this guy in our initial session. Then we'll start working with Angular CLI. So we'll speak about unit testing, advantages of it. Then we start speaking about Node.js and what is REST and stuff. We just spoke about REST. We just spoke about a little bit about REST and Node.js. That is what we will stress more upon once we start moving further. Then we speak about NoSQL DB and MongoDB. You have Mongo. When you start speaking about MongoDB, you have MongoDB, and then you have something called as Mongoose. This is the guy who will help you deal with MongoDB. So we'll speak about MongoDB and what are the things which we can use to deal with MongoDB in a NoSQL way in this module. Then finally, we'll speak about some real-time project use cases and how you would deal with it, a couple of them, and then we'll close our discussion. So these are the different modules which are pipelined for our discussion. So before starting any of our discussions, we need to have Node installed on your machines. I just showed you where you can get that. We'll speak about Angular CLI and how to get your project up and running in one go. So apart from this, you have Visual Studio Code. So you have Node.js, which I want you people to install on your machine once you start working on mean stack of technologies. Then you have Visual Studio Code. This is one of the famous IDEs to work with. So if I say download VS Code, so essentially the first link will land you on this page. Again, you have Windows or Linux or Macintosh installers. You can go ahead and download any of these depending upon what is the operating system you are working on, and start working with Visual Studio Code. That is the second tool you need to have handy once we start speaking about main stack of technologies.